Hello, my name is Mike Fox, and I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about enrolling your student for the first time and you being parents of first-time incoming students. The goals and outcomes that I have for today are really for you guys to understand the entire process from start to finish and what you need to expect to be able to complete for your students, and also what your students will need to complete for themselves. We'll go over some of the important dates and timelines. We'll discuss a little bit about financial aid. At this point, it's a little premature to start talking about that, but just to give you a brief overview of what you're going to need to do. We're going to talk about the difference between student and parent responsibility. We're also going to talk about the rules and regulations that guide us as admissions counselors, and also going to speak to you a little bit about empowering your students today, because believe it or not, even if you guys are paying the bills, the student's only going to be able to get the information unless they choose to share it with you. Understanding the entire process. I have great news for you. The universities and colleges of the world need your students. In order to pay their bills, they need to have students attend and be successful while they're going through school. Students need to be a school that fit them. The fit is one of the most important things that I talk about, and today it's going to be one of the things that, if you have any questions after we're done, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about. The fit for most students means finding the major, finding the sport, finding the atmosphere that fits them as a whole. Not every school is going to accommodate them. I use that example all the time that if you surf, you really can't do that in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So it's going to be something that if you want to surf every day, we really can't help you with that. Also want to talk a little bit about creating a timeline for everyone, and one that you can agree on as a family. It's important that everybody in the family understand what's going to be required. When do applications need to be in? If I need to interview, when does that need to take place? What all is needed for the application process in order to get that processed on time? What are the deadlines that are going to exist? So those are all things that you guys need to sit down and talk about as a family to figure out what's really going to work best for you. You need to know what requirements are going to be required at each school. As an example, for our pharmacy program at Wilkes, we require actually two separate applications. The first one is just a general app. The second application is for the pharmacy school specifically, and they actually require 3 letters of recommendation. They can come from anybody that the student sees fit, an essay from that student, and 8 hours of shadowing of a pharmacist. You'll also see that you're going to find that the nursing program is very similar in that it does have a separate application process. It also requires an interview for the student. So all those things are important to identify for each school and move forward and make sure that you accomplish them in a timely manner. You can also utilize the resources at each institution. All schools are going to have admissions counselors, coaches, and faculty that can help narrow down the search as you're going through. Many students are applying at this point between 7 to 12 colleges, sometimes even more than that. So it's important that you understand what you can do at each school, who's there to help you, and identify each of those individuals so that way you can make sure that you're doing things appropriately for each of your groups. Talk a little bit about some of the dates and timelines that are going to be coming up for you as you progress from this point forward and throughout the year. Coming up in November and December, after you've gone through the application process, if you haven't already, you need to apply. Once you apply, you need to make sure that you get all the criteria, as I mentioned, with the official high school transcript and the SAT or ACT scores or any other materials that are needed to complete that application. You really should try to complete a short list of schools that you haven't been able to visit so far. Many students start their visitation process in their junior year. Some wait until the latter part of their senior year. There's really no right way to do it. It's really up to you and your family to decide when it's convenient. You can also take advantage of resources online, like virtual tours and things like that. But once you get your short list, I encourage you to visit as many of those schools as you can fit into your schedule and also fit into your budget. Make sure that, again, you identify specialty programs that are required, the additional items that might be required to complete those specialty programs, I apologize, and all the requirements of letters of recommendation, essays, interviews, and shadowing experiences that are going to be needed to complete those. Once January rolls around, you'll see that on the 1st of January, you can complete what's known as the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but that's when it becomes available. Most families need to wait for their taxes to be completed in order to complete the FAFSA form, but some will actually do it right away with previous year's information and move forward from there. You also need to finish up any needed visits, interviews, or overnights that you should do. I typically encourage students to do overnights at their top 3 schools to make sure that you can, fit in at the school once your parents are, not by your side. Starting in February, most students, as I mentioned, try to submit their FAFSA form by February 15th if that's possible. That's not a firm deadline. It's actually just something that really prepares schools the most to get the information to you as soon as they can. Also, if you've previously filed your FAFSA form for the year starting on January 1st, you can go back and update that at any point once you get your tax information back from the IRS. Starting in March, students will begin to receive financial aid packages from varying schools. It's important that you guys sit down and try to compare those to the best of your ability, and also ask any questions that you might have to the admissions staff that you're working with. Most of the time, students are going to, really be confused as to what the bottom line cost is. I'd encourage you, especially here at Wilkes, to call us and make sure that we can explain any of those details that you might be a little bit suspect about moving forward. Again, as we progress through March and into April, as you revise your FAFSA form with updated tax information, your package is going to change. So keep an eye out for any revised package that comes out, and make sure that you try to keep those in order so that way you're up to date with the amount of money that will be required in order for the student to both come to Wilkes, and then obviously what the student will be responsible for paying back after they've completed their schooling. Again, work with your admissions counselors as much as you can to understand these processes as you move forward. As we approach May 1st, that's the national deposit deadline where most schools will require you to commit to their institution should they be your top choice. Many schools will have a penalty after you pass that May 1st deadline, so you should try to have your decision made up as close to that date as possible. Once we progress through May, June, and July, you're going to find that once you've committed, you'll have to register for orientation sessions. Here at Wilkes, we have an orientation checklist that helps provide information about what we'll need to do for you for the upcoming fall. It's important to note that after June 1st is when you can complete any loan applications that you'd like to do, whether that be the Parent Plus loan or alternative student loans. Please ensure as the last send-off for your high school that you've let them know that Wilkes is where you're going to be going and that you need a final transcript sent to the institution. Again, briefly wanted to touch on financial aid here. Again, the FAFSA form is the free application for federal student aid. It's accessible online at fafsa.ed.gov, and that is a website that will basically allow you to input your tax information for each year and determine what you as a family can pay towards school. You'll see that for Pennsylvania residents as well, if you're coming from New Jersey or New York or any other state, there might be some supplemental applications for state assistance that you'll need to complete. Here in Pennsylvania, FIA does have a separate application. There is a process known as verification. Each school is required to select 1/3 of all of their population that's applied for financial aid and verify the data that you've provided on the FAFSA form. This is done through a letter if you are selected, which will outline the process that you need to go through. So I won't go too much into depth about that. Again, we spoke a little bit about at the beginning of March, you're going to receive student award letters, which will note all the different types of financial aid that are available to students. This will include state, federal, and institutional monies that you can expect to be discounted from the bill when the student commits to the university. You'll see that on the award letter there are going to be things noted as direct loans. These are typically in the form of either the Stafford loans or the Parent Plus loan. The Stafford loans are guaranteed to the student once the student applies for the FAFSA form and that is submitted. The Parent Plus loan is a separate loan that parents can take out in their names with the student as a cosigner. The Parent Plus loan does have to be applied for separately. Alternative student loans are really the last line of defense for paying for college. There's an infinite number of different lenders out there that will actually lend to students. Most of them will require a cosigner, so it's important that you try to get that ironed out before you start applying for them as to who will be willing to cosign with the student. We do have a alternative loan list on our website that we can provide to you should you need it. Also, applying for outside scholarships is an ongoing process that you should look to do every year that you're going to college. Just because you're exiting high school, most students are aware that scholarships are available at that point, but they're actually always available as you're progressing through your college career. Applying for outside scholarships can have varying processes, so it's important that you speak with your guidance counselor to look for things locally because you'll be competing against the least amount of students. Also, if you do choose to look at a larger scholarship pool like College Board or FastWeb. Those are all online scholarship searches that really you're competing nationally. So the money is typically larger, but you're competing against a larger number of individuals that are trying to get that money. So I always advise you to start looking locally first. Last item that I want to talk to you about financial aid is the billing disbursement. We bill by semester at Wilkes, so you'll see that there are two different bills that you receive for the year. One will come out in the middle of July and beginning of August, and will be due prior to the students enrolling at the institution for the fall. The spring semester will actually have a bill go out in the latter part of the first semester, typically in the month of December. So keep an eye out for those, and please be sure to make sure that the payment is received so that the student can register for classes for the following semester. Rules and regulations. We are bound by really two distinguishing items for working with students. One of those is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Basically, this stipulates that we can only interact with the student or anybody that the student designates for us to interact with. So the scenario that I usually give to families is, even though that the parents might be paying the bills, the student ultimately has the right to determine who and what information we share with any individual outside of themselves. For you families that are interested in having that dispersed to you, there is actually a release form that you can sign during the orientation process that will allow you to receive information about Wilkes and any of the outstanding grades or billing that might be required for the student to move forward. The second is academic progress and full-time status. In order to receive financial aid at the university from both the federal, state, and institutional levels, students must maintain academic progress. Typically, this means they have to meet a percentage of credits that they've taken. They must also receive credit for those. So if the student's failing classes, that ultimately can put them into jeopardy with academic progress and also can drop them below full-time status. Full-time status is typically 24 credits in an academic year. Once they fall below that range, some of their aid can be in jeopardy. The last item I want to talk about is a little bit about empowering your students, and that's how we do it with the Wilkes University portal. This is a self-service portal that allows the students to log on using their credentials and check really any of the pertinent information while they're attending Wilkes University. The orientation checklist is going to be found here, so as you make a commitment to Wilkes, it'll be important that you sign on and go to the orientation checklist tab. There'll be resources there that you're going to have to complete, like placement testing, housing questionnaires, course preferences, selection of a major, and things like that. So keep in mind as you move forward that this is something that you're going to be utilizing quite a bit. Also, students can look to complete their financial management. Any of the billing, scholarships, grants, any of the financial aid information can be found here on this portal as well. So if there's ever a question as to what's been credited or what's been taken care of for the student, they can find that here in their financial management tab. Also, for families that are interested in grades and seeing how the student's progressing, the academic progress and grades are available on this portal as well. So all these are here in one place for the family to be able to interact with the student and also the university and have all that information at their fingertips.